bottom right-hand corner, there was like 3 pellets. It wasn't his fault. Well, it was his fault off the pattern of his gun, but I mean, he was, I'm sure he was aiming, it just wouldn't shoot for, and we changed loads of shells, and perfect. So one load will make, even if it's number 5, Federal to Winchester or Remington, we shot like 80 shells one day shooting, doing a patterning thing, and my Remington won't shoot Remington. I have to shoot Federal in my Remington, so don't just take it for granted that if you buy a turkey load, you got a full choke, oh, you're good to go. Shoot your gun.
Yes, sir.
How early do they hit the roost?
Golly.
Mr. Coyote here.
Yeah.
I don't like the coyote howlers for a locator. I have had them stay in the tree until 11 o'clock in the morning. The coyote right at daylight went out through the field. I watched the whole thing. They didn't make a noise. They didn't peep, and I knew. I roosted them the night before. I knew they were there. So at times they'll stay in the rainy days. Sometimes they'll stay in there. Usually it's 10 minutes after dark. I mean 10 minutes as soon as it gets daylight. Yeah, it's usually very early. The hens will usually start going down first, and then the toms. The toms will usually land 30 to 70 yards away and quickly get right in the middle as soon as they land. So it's usually pretty early. Weather can dictate it, and predators can dictate it that I have seen. Any other questions? JP?
No, I was just going to comment that most of my turkey hunts, I've gotten my biggest toms and I've been able to call on hens. And it seems like for some reason my slate call that I use attracts a lot of hens. So
Yeah. That's the best way. I mean, if you can get a hen to come in, it's foolproof. You can almost get up and dance around. If that hen's coming, that tom, that's his girl.
Best decoy there is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to bears. We have 6 minutes for bears.
Perfect.
Anyone get a spring bear tag this year? Raise your hand if you got one. Okay. Anyone heading over east, or are y'all southwest? Oregon or western?
South Central.
South Central. Oh, okay. Anyone in the Cascades? Okay. Well, let's move on to bears here. We'll chat for a few minutes. The bears, bear hunting has become huge throughout Oregon. Oregon has a population of what's estimated around 30,000 bears, plus or minus. It's hard to get a count on bear numbers just because of the terrain they live in. Highest concentration of bears are in southwest Oregon. That's why you can kill 3 a year down there now. You can kill 4 bear a year in the state of Oregon now with all your tags and the fall tag. So a lot of opportunities there. You know, what are bears, what are they going through right now? The bears are out and they're active right now. I was talking to a biologist, I was writing an article on the first part of March, and they were doing den studies. They radio collar sows. And they were doing den studies in southwest Oregon, down around the Elk River area. They had 6 dens that they went into that they had bears collared for. And they located them the week before in those dens. In the last week of February, they went in the first week of March to get find those same 6 bears, and 4 of them were gone already. So there's bears that are out and about. Bears are not true hibernators. People, the Disney books, talk about bears going into hibernation. Bears are not true hibernators. Their circulatory system and their metabolism, respiratory system all slow down, but they don't slow down to the point where they're really in that deep state of hibernation. They can be active year-round, especially bears in western Oregon and southwest Oregon, where it's a little bit warmer. They might be in the hole, 2 or 3 days or 2 weeks, and get out and mill around and go back in and sleep for a few days, get back out. I was talking to a guy calling coyotes in western Oregon in February, and he called in a bear in February. So these bears, they're not always in the ground as long as we would think. As soon as they come out, what's the first thing they do? They'll start eating. They start looking for grass. I know Jody and I have found a lot of bears on the coast, and I think everyone we've killed has been on grass. Their digestive system they have a terrible digestive system, bears do. You can actually, out of all the big game hunting I do in North America, the world, you can learn more from bear scat than any other scat, elk, cuckoo, whatever it is, deer, and because their digestive system is so poor. So what I'll look for a lot is we spend a lot of time looking for droppings to see what they're eating. They don't just digest cellulose, the grass, real readily. They're after the chlorophyll in the grass, which helps trigger digestive enzymes that get their body ready to eat more carrion, dead, rotting meat. So early on, basically, we're spending a lot of time looking at bears in grass. I know Jody's been out scouting They had some of his guys out there. They didn't see him.
3. We saw 3 so far.
Okay.
Not a lot of sign. Grass.
Okay.
Grass and the moss that grows on the south-facing rocks. I don't know what it is. Do you know what it's called? Moss. We'll call it moss. Let's go with moss. Yeah. The moss on the rocks. They like that stuff.
Yeah. So the south-facing slopes is where they're gonna be concentrating. Now the grass is pretty short now, but with some warm weather and sunshine, it's gonna start getting a little bit thicker. A lot of times, in fact, we've found bears on grass and they'll stay there for weeks on end. If it's a food source that's consistent, there's a lot of it. Not only will that bear stay there, but a lot of other bears will come in and start feeding on that source of grass. If you're over in Eastern Oregon, if you have a tag over there, if you're going over there with someone who is, Northeastern Oregon, a lot of bears over there, of course, a little bit different habitat, a lot more open, and another food source over there, the wild onion that they dig out there, a little bulb about the size of your pinky fingernail that grow underground. And they'll start germinating this time of year as they start getting more water and sunshine. Over there, spend time hunting underneath the snow line. Even if you have a Cascade tag here, there's been a lot of snow up in the Cascades this year, hunt right beneath the snow line because as that snow line melts, that's the most constant and consistent water supply there is. So that's going to soften up the ground right there, and that's talking over east. And it's going to not only make the grasses greener, but those onion bulbs are going to start sprouting, and the bears will just start devouring them, digging those things up. If you're over east and you're hunting those onion bulbs where these bears are digging on an open hillside, once you find a bear at whatever 3,500 feet elevation, try staying to that same elevation and that drainage, because that bear will a lot of times stick to that same elevation below where the snow line is or was if it's melted, because that's where these bulbs are flourishing. And those are a huge, a major food source to target this time of year. As the grasses, continue to grow, of course, there's going to be more and more bears on them, up to through the end of the season. But one thing that I like doing is calling bears. It's the most fun there is. And people say, well, it's a lot like calling a turkey or an elk. It's not. An elk and a turkey don't come in to kill you. A bear does. When you're out there with a predator calling a bear, you're its food source, and that thing's coming in. It's coming in to munch you. It's not like an elk and they see and they take off running. A lot of times if they see it, it only confirms the fact that, oh, there's the food right there and it happens to have 2 legs. Boom. It's a very intense deal, and it can be one of the most exciting game calling there is that I've ever done. But you think about what is the best way to call in a bear. Of course, predator calls work year-round on bears. But the best success I've had at calling bears is once the fawns and calf elk start hitting the ground. And when is that? Well, it depends where you're at. Elk pretty much are synchronized. They're going to start dropping their calves around the second week of May. Middle of May, and they're usually done right about the 1st of June. So there's about a 2-week window where calf elk start dropping their calves. Or where cow elk start dropping their calves. Over in Eastern Oregon, there are places where over 70% of the calf elk are being killed by bears, by black bears over there. So they're just decimating them, which is a bad thing, but a good thing for hunters. It should tell you if you're hunting in those areas, target those elk herds. A lot of guys I know now that are going to be calling a little bit later, towards the end of the season, are out scouting and looking for elk herds right now. And they're just keeping track of the cows, because once the calves start hitting the ground, they're going to be on those herds predator calling. The deer, who knows? The blacktail gestation period, you're hunting on the west here, is about 200 days. You're going to see fawns born anywhere from late in April all the way through the middle of July. It just depends when that doe was bred. As soon as the fawns start hitting the ground, same thing. Then the predator calls are going to start working. I haven't had a very good success using deer and elk predator call or distress calls before those animals start hitting the ground. I don't know if it's a scent thing hitting the air or what. But the calling bears are exciting. One thing to keep in mind with bears, before I got into this business, I was a science teacher for 12 years and dealt with teenagers. And I always compare bears to teenagers. You don't know what they're going to do. And what they do sometimes makes sense, sometimes it has no rhyme or reason to their behavior. You might go out tomorrow and do 10 different setups, see 10 different bears, and the first sound you make, they turn and run the other way. You might go out the next day and you call and all 10 bears come in. You never know what you're going to get with bear. I know guys that have gone out and the very first time they've called in bears and killed them. I know guys that have called for 3-4 years and never called a bear in. So you never know what you're going to get. It can be very hit and miss. When we go to calling bears, and Jody and I have called bears on the coast before in the fall as well, we like seeing